Aloha and welcome to the Nisei Veterans Memorial Center's Take Leadership Series. My name is Deidre Teagarden. I'm the Executive Director here at the Nisei Veterans Memorial Center, where our mission is to inspire people to find the hero within themselves through the legacy of our Nisei veterans. You can find out more information about the center on our website at www.nvmc.org. We are so thrilled to have all of you here with us today as we receive a very timely and important presentation from Ms. Pamela Tumpap, the president of the Maui Chamber of Commerce. Before I introduce her, just wanted to go through a few little things. First of all, to all of our regular viewers, we say thank you for joining us again this afternoon. We appreciate your time and love that you come on to support us in these talks. For those who are new, just a little bit of information about the Take series. We started this about back in June, actually, as a way for leaders from across the state to come into our homes and really talk about this new normal that we are facing as a collective community. Take is the Japanese word for bamboo. And bamboo is known for its strength and resilience and flexibility during difficult times. And I think that is something we can all relate to as we go through this new normal and have been since March. So again, we're really excited to have Pamela with us today. A few quick housekeeping items as people continue to join the talk. Number one, we welcome questions and we'll get to as many as possible at the end of Pamela's talk. There is a little question and answer box at the bottom left of your screen. So feel free to send in your questions as you think about them. Again, we will get to as many as possible after her presentation. And this webinar is being recorded and will be available on our Nisei Veterans Memorial Center YouTube channel in about a week and a half. We encourage you to check out the YouTube channel and linger there for a little while to see what other talks we have had in the past. We are sure you will not be disappointed. Also, wanted to let you know that you are all going to be receiving our weekly Wednesday update. It's an email that comes to you every Wednesday and just lets you know what's happening here at the center and of course, upcoming events. And you can unsubscribe at any time, but we really hope that you stay with us and stay engaged. That would mean a lot to us. And of course, we couldn't do anything that we do here at the center or on our campus, whether it's with our Concha preschool or Maui Adult Daycare Center upstairs, or here in our center with the exhibits that we host throughout the year, or our extensive archival collection. We couldn't do it without the support of our corporate donors. So I just wanted to say a big mahalo to HouseMart, Central Pacific Bank Foundation, VIP Food Service, Maui Health Systems, Peisha Hawaii, Maui Sons and Daughters of the Nisei Veterans, Service Rentals, Arazumi Brothers, Abbey Carpet of Maui, TJ's Warehouse, Mid-Pacific Pest Control, Maui Disposal, Puro Water Specialty Company, Sei Designs, Munekio Haraga, RT Tanaka Engineers, and the Maui News. We thank all of them, and of course, all of you who are equally wonderful supporters. At this time, it gives me great pleasure to introduce a good friend, someone I've known for a while, and a very important person in our community, and especially as we are facing what we're facing right now, Ms. Pamela Tumpap. She has been the president of the Maui Chamber of Commerce for the past 13 years. Before joining the chamber, she was president and CEO of Maui United Way, director of marketing for Oceanic Time Warner Cable, and vice president of Maui Economic Development Board. Her efforts for private and nonprofit organizations during the past 3 decades have focused on business, community, and economic development, and have included extensive interaction with government. This has given her really keen insight into each of these three sectors. She is currently a board member for the Maui Economic Development Board and Feed My Sheep. Past service includes being a member of the Hawaii 2050 Sustainability Plan Legislative Task Force, board member for the Hawaii Alliance of Nonprofit Organizations, otherwise known as HANO, past president of the Maui Nonprofit Directors Association, and on boards for numerous nonprofit organizations. Pamela is a strong advocate for business, working to overcome obstacles detrimental to the business climate and community growth, and advancing winning and sustainable solutions. She has won several awards, including the Maui Business and Professional Women's Young Careerist, State of Hawaii's Business and Professional Young Women's Young Careerist, and was one of the Maui Business and Professional Women's Women of the Year. In 2005, she became a 40 Under 40 award winner, and in 2008, she received the SBA's Small Business Journalist of the Year award for both the state of Hawaii and Region 9, and in 2016, she received the Small Business Administration's Small Business Advocate for Business and Industry award for the state of Hawaii. A lot of things, and we are really excited to welcome her today. So let's give a warm virtual welcome to Ms. Pamela Tumpap.
Well, thank you so much, Deidre. It's been a long time since I've heard my resume.
It's a long one.
Shorten it. But thank you very much. I'm so honored to be here today, meeting with you and the Nisei Veterans Memorial Center. This is such a great honor because this is a group that I feel very kin to, because this is a group who really has invested in the community. They understand the importance of getting involved and engaged, leaving a legacy, and looking at ways to leverage opportunities. You know, I go back to when the facility was built, and I think it was Leonard Oka who first told me about it many, many years ago in his insurance office. But, you know, when it started, it was going to be a great building, and over time, more programs were added with the adult daycare and then the children's preschool program and the museum and the artwork that you bring through. So I just am very honored to be with a group of such esteemed people who can really relate to a lot of what I'm going to talk about, which is where businesses are at these days and our need for leadership and legacy living in the future.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, and thank you for that. And definitely the men came home from World War II, and so many of them opened businesses. They got very much involved with the community with that motto of continuing service. So thank you for acknowledging that. And I'm just going to turn it over to you. I know you have a great presentation, so I'll be back at the end.
Oh, thank you so much, Deidre. Well, I just want to thank Amber Koutsos. She is handling the slides for me today. Amber is our office manager at the Maui Chamber of Commerce. And for those who might have been familiar or grew up with the television show Charlie's Angels, like me, I'm sort of like Charlie. I'm the one that's often not seen, the voice that's heard, directing things kind of from behind the scenes because I'm mostly in meetings. And then we have the Chamber Angels, of which Amber is our lead angel, who gets things done. It takes a team to get things done in the background, and she's always there for us. So I thank her for helping with the slides today. I was going to share a little bit about my background. Now actually, there has been a turn of a year, so I'm now in my 14th year with the Maui Chamber of Commerce, being their president. For many years in my 20s, I was a volunteer, chaired the Government Action Committee earlier on, as well as sat on many committees, including the Made in Maui Committee and the marketing committees. But the Chamber is a very important organization in our community. It's to advance and promote a healthy economic environment for business, advocating for responsive government and quality education, while preserving Maui's unique community characteristics. And I think many of you over the years may have heard, I certainly heard when I came into the Chamber, it was very interesting to come from being at Maui United Way to the Maui Chamber of Commerce and hear the word profit as if it's a bad word. and then hear business as if we were these entities that had no heart. And some in our community were starting to really take a tone and a turn to say commerce and business was a bad thing. They don't realize the risk that business owners face to provide jobs for employees, often when they don't have health and care themselves, but they make sure their employees do. And you know, we wanted to turn that around. We want to remind everybody that commerce, which everybody participates in, improves everybody's lives. And I don't think people really connect or have the history maybe to connect with what commerce really means these days. But if you look at what we do in terms of improving social well-being, helping to improve standards of living, we're a connector, job creators, we increase wealth, expand trade, assist in industrial development, we help benefit underdeveloped countries, and of course we aid in emergencies, which is a lot of what we're doing now. So the Maui Chamber of Commerce has been around. We just celebrated our 110th anniversary celebration. It was in February, but we held a big party called BizMix Maui, which was meant to be our ongoing new fundraiser to support the Chamber every year. We hope to do it again next March, if that's possible. We'll see how that goes in terms of crowds. But that happened just before COVID. So the organization has a long history of businesses supporting other businesses. So I wanted to, through today, kind of just give you a little bit of a journey. Deidre really covered my background so well, so I'm just going to go through a couple of slides to talk a little bit about our state history, how businesses are faring, some bright spots with the CARES Act, what we're currently working on at the Maui Chamber of Commerce, and then really about moving forward. Here's a little bit of my career. As it was kind of mentioned in my bio, what some people say to me is that they think my perspectives are different because I worked at Maui United Way and Social Services, because I was at MEDB in the dawn of our high-tech era when we were bringing in the supercomputer. I then went on to be director of marketing for Spectrum when they were launching Roadrunner and digital cable services, and then joined the Chamber team. So working with businesses, and in truth, in all of those careers, I worked with businesses just in many different ways. And when I was working in the tech industry, you know, we were there when the internet started here in Maui. And I got to help with high-tech marketing, high-tech startups through the incubation center, helping small businesses write business plans. I ran the manufacturing extension program funded by the National Institute of Science and Technology, and left as a vice president there, and then went on to work for the cable company. And when I was at the cable company, that's when 9/11 hit. And in the cable and media world, if you know about the Twin Towers, there are many broadcast and media companies. When 9/11 hit, we were actually having a conference a few days, it was planned to be a few days after 9/11. And we had all of these programmers from different television channels that were in our office. I was called in at 3 o'clock in the morning. I arrived at the office immediately at 6 a.m. We all had all of passcodes for new locks on the building. And the reason was because in that emergency, what they thought was going to happen was that the terrorists were going to try and knock out the airports and all communication towers. So everybody was gearing up. And those people from the different programming channels who were in my office were devastated because they all had friends and family in those towers during that time. Of course, our conference was canceled. And we, back then, worked to help them in that emergency time through my department, which was the marketing department, and worked with them. And you know, we did a lot of counseling at that time. And some of that, of course, has turned out to be very helpful in things that have come since then. When I was at Maui United Way, I used to joke with my friends. They would say, "What is your dream job?" And I said, "Running Maui United Way." And twice I had an opportunity to run Maui United Way. The first time was I had just taken the job with the cable company, and 1 year in, they offered me a position And I said I couldn't take it at the time because I'd made a 2-year commitment. At the end of my 2nd year commitment at the cable company, they called me back. And it was after 9/11, but I was there joining Maui United Way's team when people needed extreme assistance, people who had never needed help before. And again, this is a time when nothing was closed. Travel was not shut down. Of course, it was at a trickle pace, but we had people in desperate situations. And while at Maui United Way, I sat on the Volunteers Organized to Aid in Disasters called VOAD. It's a committee here in Maui County where you can help. And I've been on that during Hurricane Katrina and the avian flu. So I've gotten to know a lot about different kinds of disasters and understand how people react in disasters and understand that, you know, it can be very, very challenging. And when the avian flu came out back then in China, the mortality rate was 50%. So we were having very serious discussions, not all of which came to the surface and were made public. And I say that because as I go through my talk today, there are nuances of things that I'm going to share and feelings that the business community had. In some of those cases, I understand why not everything's public, but there's so many more things the business community wanted to understand going through COVID-19 that we haven't understood thus far and are still hoping to hear a full plan as we move forward. And then with the Chamber, I joined in 2006, which meant I was at the Chamber during the 2008 recession. And so again, businesses were still open and tourism was at a slower pace, but it was still coming in. But you might recall, very early in that recession, we lost Aloha Airlines. I mean, who would have ever thought, if you've lived here for a long time, that we would lose Aloha Airlines? Followed not long after by Maui Pineapple Company. And that's a company that my family had ties in, and I used to work at the Kapalua Resort early on. So these were big losses, and big losses that meant we had a lot of people unemployed. And in the past, the visitor industry helped shore up those times. When the other industries closed, the visitor industry has been, in many cases, our saving grace. And during the recession, we almost lost the Maui Chamber of Commerce. We did lose the Maui Contractors Association. Businesses, when they're struggling, can't afford to pay their membership dues, and the Chamber is funded by membership dues, as was the Maui Contractors Association. Today, we now house the Construction Industry of Maui, which is a trade council under the Chamber, but it was to bring back that construction industry voice again. And so we're very proud to house them under the Chamber's umbrella. And again, when HC&S shut down, huge job losses, and of course not related to as a disaster, just very challenging economic times. But when we look at these job losses, the visitor industry has been there to help absorb a lot of that. So the reason I share these things is because today we're at a time when we're really looking at some tough situations. When I joined the Chamber of Commerce, I began doing a little work with government, working with MEDB. I've been doing a lot of work over the last 14 years, working with government at the Chamber. And one of the things I realized very early on is our state is bankrupt. Now, we're not alone. Many states are bankrupt with unfunded government health benefits and retirement benefits liabilities. In business, we cannot raid those accounts. You can go to jail for that. But we've been bankrupt, and you know, not long after, well, I learned that the state was bankrupt. It started to come up over the last few years. It sort of bubbled up, and everybody realized, you know, there was across the nation these reports, state by state, of everybody who was bankrupt, and then it kind of bubbled back down again. And sometimes we forget that that's where we're at. But it's important in times like these to understand that that's where we're at. And I share this because it all becomes relevant as we start looking at how to move forward. So I want to share a little bit about Hawaii's economic development history. While I was here for some of it, I wasn't here in the 60s. I arrived in 1981. But the visitor industry, you know, was between the 60s and 70s, the visitor industry was created. as a result of economic stagnation and population exodus. And some of my friends tell me, like Miles Kawakami, there just weren't jobs here. You know, people went off to school, they got educated, they came home, and they didn't have a lot of job opportunities here. So, you know, hence we created the visitor industry. In the 1980s and 1990s, the industry, that engine was doing well. In fact, some say we exceeded the growth expectations by about we were a decade sooner than originally planned. And that's why we have some of these concerns and issues of overcrowding. But the industry did do what it was meant to do, which was it was creating a lot of jobs. But we started realizing in the 80s and 90s that while it was doing that, we were becoming very dependent on the visitor industry. And so that became a challenge. And so then we pursued high tech. Now, hence my career at Maui Economic Development Board. I was there when we were developing the Maui Research and Technology Park. I first worked on that side before I started working on some of the state projects in high tech incubation. But we were pursuing a high tech industry. Why? Because it was higher paying jobs. It was the type of STEM careers that we covet now. And we had Crown Jewel, the Maui High Performance Computing Center that Senator Inouye helped get funding for. So it was really an amazing time. But we knew it wasn't easy, and we knew it was going to take investment. And so over the time, we've known we're very dependent on the visitor industry. And then in 2000s to 2020, in 2008, I sat on the Hawaii 2050 Sustainability Plan, a plan we said was never going to sit on the shelf. Well, if it was up to me, it wouldn't be sitting on the shelf, but it got some traction, and there was a lot of hoopla around when it was first created. And it is an important plan because it's based on the triple bottom line of sustainability, where you bring the economy, the environment, and social well-being together, which was known as people, profit, planet. Today, we call it the quadruple bottom line of sustainability. And now we add culture. So again, we've had a long history of knowing that we are overly dependent on the visitor industry and that we needed to look at doing things differently. So how are we doing now in this COVID environment where we're very over dependent on the industry? For years, the Maui Chamber of Commerce has reported, we think that the visitor industry trickle down, that dollar that trickles through our economy, we thought it was 75%. And over the years, as the industry grew and ancillary industries grew around it, now that COVID's hit, we think that trickle down is 85 to 90%. So we have a majority of businesses that are in crisis. And by national standards, most of our businesses qualify as small businesses, and a vast majority of those really are micro businesses, particularly after the 2008 recession, where not all the jobs came back. We were very grateful that Mayor Mike Victorino jumped in right away with programs to help, like the MEO Help Program for residents, and the first ever of its kind, the micro business loan program through the Maui Chamber of Commerce. They called and said, what can we do to help? We knew federal money was coming down. We weren't sure when. We weren't sure that all of our very micro businesses would qualify for that money, and we knew that they were in danger. In business, you like to say you want to have 6 months, preferably a year of reserves, but businesses don't. We just don't. And we're not big corporations with all of these reserves. Many of us in business have been, surviving and lost a lot of wealth with the 2008 recession and have managed to come back, but just the reserves aren't there. The other thing is, it's really important to understand that we came off a high. So 2019 was a high, a great year for the visitor industry. And with that great trickle-down effect, many were re-upping and reinvesting. People were putting money in renovating their facilities. Others were putting money in expanded inventory, thinking visitors, the retail stores were excited, thinking people were gonna buy more. And then COVID hits. So COVID hits and you start to see a difference between essential services and non-essential services. All businesses are hurting. We're just not hurting all in the same way. So essential services, construction, grocery stores, medical, while many were able to operate, they still saw losses. And they're still dealing with other issues related to COVID, as we all are. Then you had those businesses who were more reliant on the visitor industry, and they were pretty much experiencing losses in correlation to the reliance on the industry. So dependent on how dependent they were, was impacting their finances. And those who were completely dependent, for example, event companies, major event companies, went to zero income still today. They have not been able to operate large-scale events, and their income tanked. And you might have heard some of the new programs the county is doing with the local musicians. It's because they too were seeing great losses. So we forget how far it trickles down. And it even trickles all the way down to the gal who recently cut my hair. I was talking to her and she said, well, you know, at first, she's located in Kihei, and she said at first, I had to do social distancing. So I took out a third of my chairs so I could space everything around in my salon. And she said, but then because of my location, most of my local clients worked in the visitor industry. And because they're laid off, instead of getting monthly haircuts, they're only coming once every 3 or 4 months. So you can see how it starts to trickle down. For those businesses, especially those who really geared up for a visitor, for another year of high level of visitors and working to prep for pre-COVID environments, what happened is you had all of these people who we suddenly get the stay at home, work at home order in March. And they immediately realized what this was going to mean to their business. We had people crying. We had people angry, distraught, worried about their workers, knowing that within a matter of weeks they were going to have to lay off their workers, not wanting to lay anybody off. They had gone through 2008, recovered. They just were devastated. And yet, in time, we counseled them. We started working with them on how to, time to freshen up the business plan, revisit things. Let's talk about what you can do. Let's start looking at expenses and things you can cut. Very early on, we heard from a gentleman who had a store on Front Street. Now, he has multiple stores. One of his stores, retail store, the rent was $25,000. So $25,000, just kind of keep that in your mind for a minute. People started to adjust in April because they had hope. The word was we're going to reopen in May, and federal funding's coming down, and things are moving, and PPP's happening, and the EIDL loans are happening. So there was hope. There was some challenges rolling out the PPP program. And then many who took advantage of it realized it mostly benefited the employees, but not as much the employer side. And while they were happy to do that, they were still struggling with how to pay their rent. Then the May opening was delayed, and people were angry again and distraught. And then we could reopen in June. So for this person who owed $25,000 in rent, half of March was $12,500. Then we had $25,000 in April and May. So when he could reopen in June, he had a debt of $62,500 just in rent. And while the landlords couldn't kick people out, they did rent deferrals. And the banks were doing mortgage deferrals, and everything's getting deferred. But what we're creating is a backlog of debt. So then June rolls around, and still we can reopen. And of course, restaurants were doing modified reopenings with takeout or drive-through. People were social distancing. And you started to see a little bit more traffic in June, but they were still struggling. And many businesses tried to reopen, but it just wasn't worth it. They brought their employees back and they geared up, but there was no traffic. And here you can see areas, and we went to many different towns and took pictures from Wailea to Paia to Lahaina, just boarded up shops. It was very devastating. And in many cases, some of those shops are still boarded up. Some of them are not. Some of their, you know, today is a great day. It's the 15th, it's reopening day. Some of the frustration has eased a little bit, but it's been very tenuous over the last couple of days because the plans were unclear. And the plans between the counties and the state were unclear. And people were wondering whether we were actually going to reopen or if it was going to get pushed back again. And thankfully it wasn't. But what we keep finding is snippets of a plan are announced and we keep moving forward with things, but businesses need to hear the whole plan. Whether it's good or bad, whether they agree with it or not, when they hear what government's thinking, they can use that to make their own decisions for their own business plans. In the absence of plans, they have a high level of frustration because they feel like they're being left in the dark. So many of our members and businesses, you know, during this time, we didn't focus just on our members. And we didn't know how long people are going to be able to pay their bills and how long we were going to sustain, but we said we will save every business we can and operate as long as we can. And, you know, then some programs to help businesses, which also came with an admin fee. And we all the businesses and the nonprofits helping are taking a highly reduced admin fee to make sure the money's going to the right place. But we still have to cover our costs. So things are happening and everybody's moving forward, but it's still a very difficult, very uncertain time. The Hawaii Tourism Authority is moving forward with a renewed strategic plan, you know, that is going to be much more in line with what we were looking at in revamping the industry. So that's coming forward and we're excited. But on the government side, businesses are still waiting to hear for a strong recovery plan from the administration. And at this point, given the starts and the stops and the gearing up when we delayed, they don't have a lot of money left. They've got one shot at this. And that's why today we get a lot of calls saying, why isn't this business open? They can be. And it's because it costs them more money to be open than not be open. So I find myself now as the chamber president of arguably the hardest hit economic region in the nation due to COVID-19. Now, my mother always said, if you think you're having a bad day, you don't have to look far to find somebody who's having a worse day. And of course, we've seen fires and floods and other disasters in other regions. But when it comes to what we're experiencing on an economic front, we're highly challenged. And Amber had just a slide. Go back to that, Amber, for just a moment for me. Thank you. So we've got these businesses who are highly challenged. The PPP funds have run out. The EIDL funds have run out. They're trying to survive until now that we are reopened for trans-Pacific travel. They're just trying to survive for the next few months as long as they can. They hoped Congress would come up with that next round of PPP. And as we all know, Congress is at a standstill. So, you know, as we look at now, where are we at from an economic standpoint? We look at Hawaii is now tied with Nevada as having the highest negative percent change in GDP at 42.2%. And Dr. Carl Bonham says, while we're tied now, we had another month. So technically, we've been worse than Nevada. If you look at our unemployment chart, so March, once upon a time, we had one of the lowest unemployment rates in the nation. And then March was, you know, we had, March was lower than the US average, and then March was higher than the US average. And then April unemployment goes up to 34.6%. This is for Maui, which is our metropolitan area of Kahului, Wailuku, and Lahaina. So we have the highest, at that point, we have the highest unemployment in the nation for the metropolitan areas. And then it goes down slightly in May. Okay, so people go, well, it went down, yes. It goes down slightly in May because of a couple of things. You've got changing economic conditions on the mainland and here with reopening and PPP loans and people bringing employees back. So, but then when you go back and you look at what we saw, the national spike during that time went from 4.4% in March to 14.7% in April, compared to Maui going from 2.2% in March to 34.6% in April. The highest unemployment in April, May, and August, and so and PPP has run out. So this is creating significant challenges for us moving forward. We're also projected to have a very slow recovery. Remember I mentioned that in other tough economic times, the visitor industry helped shore up our job losses in other arenas. But now the visitor industry is going to struggle to bring back their own folks. And we have overbuilt industry around a very robust industry that's going to be slow to recover. So it's important to remember that, first of all, we're coming off of these trends of growth. And Dr. Carl Bonham is showing, and this slide illustrates that our best recovery helps us stabilize in 2022. Now, there are reports from DBIT who think we're going to stabilize earlier in 2021. Personally, I'd rather under-promise and over-deliver because we need people to be thinking and planning for long-term. But as you can see from this chart, there's a high, there's a medium, and then there's a low. And the low recovery takes us out to 2023. And then there's worse, which would be going to 2025 before we start looking at records close to pre-COVID. So we know that this is going to be continuing forward with a challenging time. And there are going to be huge revenue losses at both the state and county level. And during the county budget process, I explained that we have built farming, restaurant, retail activities, and more around the growth needs of the visitor industry. But when that industry is shut down, we've already seen now that our community can't sustain all these businesses, hence the losses that we've seen. And we don't see them all because they're not all reported. So some of them are reported in special interest stories, but often when people go out of business, they don't make a lot of fanfare about it. It's hurtful. And sometimes people are embarrassed or they're just devastated. And it's not something they want to make a lot of commotion over. And so while we've got a lot of CARES Act funding that's coming about, and it's going to help us retool and help us get people in the workforce, the question is, where are we going to put them in the workforce right now? Because again, the visitor industry is going to take some time to bring back their own folks. So the good news is, though, we've really had a united front in looking at what can we do in Maui County. Mayor Victorino and his administration have been doing an amazing job working with nonprofits and others, working to get the CARES Act funding. You know, every meeting is, we are not going to leave a dime on the table. We want to use everything up. So we're very excited. One of our bright spots is the Made in Maui County Festival. We've been doing this festival for 6 years. We've had over 59,000 attendees, done over $3 million in retail sales. But the festival was more than a big selling day, 2 days of a big selling day every year. The festival was an economic development platform to engage people not only in shopping locally, but then connecting wholesale buyers and distributors, both statewide, nationally, and internationally, with our local manufacturers making niche products and companies who wanted to export. So this is where the big economic program and kicker comes in. Now, this year, when COVID hit, we surveyed our vendors early on, and the majority wanted to have an in-person festival. And unlike the county with the county fair, who had huge expenses they had to commit to earlier on, we had lined up partners and asked them to work with us, and they were all willing to do that, and had really hoped to do a live festival. And we've been attracting about 10,000 people a year. But it became very clear in July that was not going to happen. So we had been doing some work on virtual just in case, and we are now pivoting. So the 7th annual Hawaiian Airlines Made in Maui County Festival will be virtual. And we are super excited to be holding this in a way that we still feel we can attract over 10,000 people. It will be held on Saturday and Sunday, November 7th and 8th from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. There'll still be our opening and closing ceremonies. We're going to have virtual vendor booths branded with the vendors' logos and information. They can sell unlimited products in their booth. They can house 200 shoppers, each of them, in their booth at any point in time. And they can also do a virtual chat with people visiting their booth. There's a little button where people can click on to chat with the vendors. So they'll still be manning their booths like they would in a live festival. And then simultaneously, we will be broadcasting live across the world. And we have hired a professional team to do this. Well, we've been doing this now for a number of months. We wanted somebody who's been doing it even longer than that to live stream us to the world. And we're going to have Alaka Ipaleka and Kathy Collins talking with our local manufacturers, learning about their passion and their products. We're going to have local musicians. We're going to have Meet Our Makers videos on other manufacturers. We're going to have vendor and sponsor commercials that will be going out not only statewide, but nationally and internationally. And as we started doing this, we realized we could leverage this opportunity to not just support the manufacturing industry, but to also benefit the visitor industry. That this is a time when people who have a love and affinity for Maui and Maui County and love our products, they could come in and visit us even when they may not be able to fly in and come and visit us. And we realized that wholesale buyers that we might have never invited to visit us because of the long flights now can visit us and connect with our vendors here and buy and distribute local products made in Maui County across the globe. Now, not every vendor is ready to go to international exporting, but for those that are, they have that opportunity. And by creating a virtual event, we saved these opportunities. We could have deferred it for another year, but we realized we really needed to do this. And it's a festival that is really cherished by the community. So now we're working with the visitor industry and we're showing them ways that they can infuse some of their messages. We can share some of the rooted videos. We could talk about the new kind of visitor industry that we're creating and really publicize that while keeping, of course, our focus on this is a manufacturer show and reminding people about the amazing products that they'll have access to. So we expect to bring in over 10,000 people. We've already been featured. We've expanded our partnerships. DBED, Department of Business, Economic Development, Tourism, had us featured at their booth in the Tokyo International Gift Show. I believe over 30,000 people were attending that, so we're excited about that. And then as different people started saying, hey, Pam, we promoted on our Instagram account. And they'd say, I have 52,000 Instagram followers. And somebody'd say, I have 10,000. Somebody else would say, I have 30. We started coming up with this idea of a 1 million followers pledge. And so we are asking the community, if you will help us promote Made in Maui County Festival this year, the 7th annual Hawaiian Airlines Made in Maui County Festival, and you'll take some of our information. We're happy to share it with you, put posts on Instagram, Facebook. If you have an e-blast you can send out, we can send you an electronic flyer or printed flyers. We want to reach over 1 million people this year in a new way to invite them to come in and see this year's festival. And it really takes a lot of help. So there's lots of ways to get involved. We need promotional help. We need help for the broadcast days with food and volunteers. So there's different opportunities, and we're looking for those who can really work with us. In addition, we're working with Mayor Victorino on 2 additional programs. The microbusiness loan program we started with had an original investment of $1 million. That was spent very quickly. We had another infusion of $750,000. We have some of that money, about $200,000 left, that we can still give out, but some people are kind of waiting to see if they're going to go for some grant programs or the loan program. So things might be shifting a little bit, but we're working with the county right now on a farmer and rancher continuity plan to provide them with some aid. There's $2.5 million that we're working with the county on. And then the small business mortgage and rent relief. I mentioned that story of the person who owed $62,500 just through May. That, by the way, that store at that rent had to be shut down. But still there's debt that remains there. But there's many businesses right now who have backed up mortgages and rent programs. And while they're blessed to have deferrals, that debt still looms. So we're looking at $1 million program to help them out. Our annual labor law seminar is even more critical than ever. It's something we do every year to remind businesses how to deal with human resource issues as people are rehiring many of their employees back. They're addressing health and safety issues, child care, senior care, family care. These are things that businesses need to know how to handle. So our annual labor law seminar is now going to be virtual, which is great news because normally it costs $399 for members and $499 for non-members. And now it's $150 for members and $175 for non-members. And so that's something we're excited about. And then we are also going to do the Mayor's Small Business Awards. So very thrilled about the Mayor's Small Business Awards. This is a bright light. This is a time when we really need it. We need to be honoring outstanding businesses, and we're going to go virtual so that we don't miss it again and share tips about how people are surviving these times. So we have applications available. We want everybody out there to nominate deserving small businesses in 6 different categories, and we can share more information on that. And then lastly, I just wanted to share that, in addition to all these things that we're doing, what COVID did was shine a light on areas that we had challenges on even before COVID. And we can't ignore them now. If we continue to do things the same old way and expect a different result, that's the definition of insanity. So we're looking for leadership, strong leadership at the state level, on our county council. We need everybody to get out and vote for experienced people who can make a measurable difference during this time. It's critically important. We also need truth. We've seen a lot of politics during the pandemic on all levels, a lot of stuff going on at the state and national level. Businesses and residents want to hear the truth. And that's really important going forward. We need priorities over politics, and we need leaders who are going to tell us the truth so we can come together and make some tough decisions. We need vision to work with long-term vision with a very long lens to bring together public, private, nonprofit sectors, work together, again, based on that triple, now quadruple bottom line of sustainability. We need action plans. Plans without action really would be pointless. So we've got a crisis. We need to get people together and first shore up our visitor industry. That's most important. Work urgently to bring that back. Other industries are wonderful and help sustain us, but we need jobs. The best way to shore us up is to create meaningful jobs and bring our residents back to work. We need to leverage investments and fix broken systems. We need to look at regulatory environments. We've kind of had death by 1,000 cuts over the years, and we've talked to government about that. We need to streamline processes and move forward with a more diversified and sustainable economy. And here's a chart, and oddly enough, what's old is new. A lot of what is being talked about as the new economic plan, these are things we talked about 20 years ago at MEDB. Sure, robotics and artificial intelligence are more heightened these days, but we talked about medical tourism. Well, we didn't talk about 5G. We talked about the latest and greatest broadband, software development, medical research, yes, robotics, film industry. So we need to, though, also understand in the context of what's happening today, what is happening with these technologies and where are we well aligned with our assets, take advantage of our location in the Pacific region, and where we can really compete in a global marketplace. So we also have to understand changing technologies like AI and robotics that are going to put some jobs out of place. This is a site that talks about by percentage what the likelihood of those jobs are that are going to be lost with robotic technology. And we have to look at how we get to STEM jobs, higher paying jobs, to address our higher living wage. So as we look to diversify our economy, we really need to understand that we need investment, because diversification takes a lot of investment. And in a time where we've had a high regulatory environment, where government assurances like the super ferry went out the window, where government and court assurances are still seeing projects being held up like the telescope on Mauna Kea, we have to decide where are we going to go and focus on the right things. And so that's going to be critical, that we prioritize where we want to go and do that together and create that living wage. And, you know, we also have to look at who are we creating Maui for? And I have a whole nother speech on that for a different time. But, you know, are we really able to create STEM jobs here right now? Will come home really work when we don't have affordable housing and rentals? We have a chart here that shows that in 2019, the median home price of affordable housing, well, not affordable, the median home price went over $800,000 twice in 2019. So for the Maui Nui Attainable Housing Forum, we projected it out, and with just an annual 4% increase, which developers in the room balked at because they knew that was so low. They knew this was really ultra conservative. And by projecting it out, by 2024, the median home price will be $1 million. So if you have a child or a grandchild that, you know, by 2024 might be looking for a house, $1 million. By 2042, $2 million is expected to be the median home price. We have to do things differently. We have to leave a legacy. This group well understands that. I'm trying to do my own project with a botanical garden nursery and farm up in Kula. We're all working together to come up with different things. And what I want to say is, so many of you have your own passion projects. Or if you don't, you might be serving with a nonprofit. And especially in these times, nonprofits need additional funding and help. There's so many ways to get back. But we need to do it. I had a friend who was going to retire. She's in her mid-70s. And when she said that, I said, no, kind of like the milk commercial. You can't, because we need you. Right now, we need all of you. We need thinking, committed people of honor who understand the importance of leaving a legacy for our children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, and getting involved. So together, let's leave a lot of amazing, amazing legacies and start by coming up with a sustainable economy where we can have a great quality of life and we can have meet, you know, a living wage so that kids will come back home from college and want to remain here. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Pam. And I can imagine a lot of virtual clapping right now. That was a really great presentation and took us on a great history, also the current conditions, but it gave us some hope for the future too. We definitely have some questions that have come in.
Great.
But before I start, I want to talk a little bit more about the Made in Maui County Festival and your website. So if we do have people online who are interested in supporting the chamber or being part of the Made in Maui County Festival, is everything on your website?
Yes, thank you. So if you go to madeinmauicountyfestival.com, you can find information there. We do have sponsorships available. Unfortunately, at this time, even though it's a virtual event, we cannot keep selling in booths because they have to upload their products, and that takes time. So but you can sign up for booths for next year. But there's information there, and if you want to register, you do need to just kind of register to be involved in the event. You can register there as well. If you are a wholesale buyer, you can also register, and they will get a special invitation for a time when the wholesale buyers can connect more one-on-one with our local vendors.
Okay.
But thank you for.
Great, and we will definitely, we don't have 50,000, although I would love to have 50,000 people on our constant contact, but we have about 3,000. So we
That's
will
awesome.
definitely be sharing your information. And I know that there's always a lot of interest from Japan. Hankyu shop
Yes.
department store comes every year, and I know we have people from Japan on this call today. So
Oh, great.
if someone from Japan is interested in purchasing items from the Made in Maui County Festival, it is possible, correct?
It is possible. Now, not all vendors sell to every region. And so when you visit their booth, our requirement is that they need to disclose in their booth. So when you first get there, read the little description about the company and they'll share where they ship to and talk to you about their shipping practices.
Okay, great. So we will definitely support you on that. We're excited. I love the Made in Maui County Festival. You do a great job with it every year.
Thank you.
Here's a question.
Yeah.
Do you think with COVID, and you touched upon this in your talk, how COVID has really pushed us to look at ourselves and all of that, and look at these initiatives that we've been talking about for years, and maybe now is the time to do it. But do you think now is really honestly the time to start pushing our tech initiatives? We have that beautiful tech park up there. Is now the time, thanks to COVID?
Well, it's interesting, and as I know you've had like Dr. Carl Bonham on as well, and the key thing that most of us come to is in terms of investment, and I guess part of it is who's making the investment. A lot of investment comes by government. In terms of our economic recovery, the first thing we must do is shore up the visitor industry. And by that, I don't mean we don't envision that it's going to come back the way it was before. But how do we transition the visitor industry to create those jobs, bring in those folks who are going to be more respectful, do things in a different way so that we avoid the overcrowding and we bring up the resident sentiment on the visitor industry? That has to come first. But we can't have the absence of planning on moving forward while we're doing that. And there are many ways. We used to talk about in the high-tech park, all these software developers who love to windsurf, and they would come for what we would call skunk work projects, where they'd come out for a period of time. My daughter's friends who work for innovative companies like Buffer and Hootsuite, they'll sit on my deck or at the beach and do their customer service work. So there's lots of ways we can start pursuing it, but when it comes to the larger attraction, it's going to take big investment, and for the next few years, our state and our county are going to see revenues tank.
All right. Thank you for your honesty on that one. And the trickle down effect can't be overstated. You mentioned that in your talk too, but cannot be overstated. Do you have any forecast or outlook for small businesses on Maui for the next 6 months from now? I mean, with everything that you're hearing, all the different task forces that you sit on, your engagement with the mayor's recovery efforts. If you had a crystal ball, what would you say about the next in 6 months?
I think the next 6 months are critical. In fact, well, right now I think the next 3 months are critical. It comes down in many cases to staying power. We've already gotten calls from some folks who, kept employees on longer. They didn't think this was going to last this long. And we've gotten some people who now have realized they've dipped into their savings. I've had a couple people call and say, I can no longer stay on Maui. I'm now going to have to retire in a different state. My house is now my best asset, and I'm going to have to move. But many are still holding on. So it often comes down to how much they had in reserves when this started. How quickly, we don't know. I'm hoping we hear on the news tonight about the travel traffic today. How many visitors are going to start coming back in? That slide from Dr. Carl Bottom shows, again, the experts say it's economic recovery from the standpoint of, one, we've got to get our act together on a plan and clearly communicate to visitors what that plan is. We started to see people start booking, and when they heard Mayor Harry Kim was not going to follow the governor's plan, and there were some other questionable plans. We saw bookings already drop here on Maui. So 16th, 17th, 18th, things were up, and then all of a sudden it dropped off. It's because visitors are paying attention and they're looking at our plan. So we need a solid plan. We need to all remember that this is a partnership. Our partnership really is about protecting each other as well as our guests. But of course, if we're protecting each other, we're protecting our guests as well. And a lot of people don't realize that a lot of the clusters are not visitors coming in, they're residents coming back from somewhere else. So if we all work together, keep our numbers low, that should hopefully speed up our recovery. In terms of my crystal ball, we know we're going to lose some businesses. It's just going to be the course. The question we ask and fight for every day is how many can we keep from falling down? And that'll also depend on what Congress does. And apparently they're going to wait till after the election, we'll see. But what's going to happen on a next wave of recovery? If we see more recovery, I think we have a better chance of sustaining businesses over the next 6 months. And by then, hopefully the visitor industry will have recovered to a point where we can continue to bootstrap things until we make it again.
Last question, and then I'm going to give some closing remarks and then come back to you for final remarks. But before that, last question is, do you have a special vision or protocols in place that you're sharing with your businesses so that, we can reopen, but we're also staying safe? I mean, is there something above and beyond that you are doing to share that with your families and with your members?
Couple of things. Yes, thank you. It's a great question. So one of the things that we've been trying to do that's sort of an umbrella thing, first and foremost, is working with each industry. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce and industries came together and they put together a program booklet, and anybody can contact our office at 244-0081. We will send you some safety guidelines and protocols. But each industry, as we worked with our mayor to reopen, industry helped drive that. Since there was no national plan that said, this is what we're gonna do, industry by industry, we looked at where the risk areas were and how they could mitigate that. And then we were working with the county, and the mayor and his team would assess those different plans. And that's how we got to reopen some things even sooner than other counties in our state. The other thing is there's a lot of concern in the business community about being sued. And as every attorney I know says, you can be sued at any time for any reason. And it's really hard to detect where somebody really truly got COVID, but we know on the mainland there are those lawsuits. So we in the U.S. Chamber of Commerce are also still pushing for what we call safe harbor legislation to protect businesses. What we're going to ask those businesses are to do the recommended guidelines. As the mayor says, if you go above and beyond recommended guidelines, you usually do very well in a lawsuit should that ever occur. And so we're telling people, do what's reasonable. There's always, of course, costs to doing all of these things, and the costs depend on the business and the type of operation as well. But do what you can, know the guidelines. Do what you can to follow the guidelines. And of course, MEDB right now has a program to help people prepare their business. They've got grant funding available to help people prepare their business for those preparations to modernize, whether it's getting PPE, the protective gear, whether it's getting putting up dividers or improving ventilation or things in your business. They've got some funds that can go up to $25,000 to help.
Great. So a lot of good things happening within the community. Pamela, I just want to say thank you. I'm going to come back to you in a second for closing remarks, but all of you, thank you for tuning in today. We really appreciate it. Just to let you know, on Saturday, we are going to be continuing our Afternoon with the Author series with Lois Ann Yamanaka. She will be talking about her book, Wild Meat and the Bully Burgers, as well as her father's memoirs that he wrote as an AJA, American Japanese Ancestry soldier, serving in the Korean War. So that'll be Saturday at 1:30. Next Tuesday for our Take Leadership Series, we're going to be welcoming on David Lassner, the president of University of Hawaii, to talk to us about what's going on in his neck of the woods. On the 23rd, we have a panel of women. It's called The Fearless, the Fabulous, the Feminine. It's in conjunction with the U.S.-Japan Council, and we're bringing on Meredith Ching from A&B Foundation, Malika Dudley, and Sadine Ota to just talk about women leadership. It'll be a really good one. That'll be on the 23rd at 4 p.m. And then we close out the month with Grant Chun, the CEO of Halemaha Olu, on the 27th, and Sharon Suzuki, the president of Maui County and Hawaii County Electric, part of Hawaiian Electric, at 4 p.m. on Thursday, the 29th. All of this information is on our website, as well as the weekly Wednesday update, which you will all receive next week. But if you're interested in David Lassner's talk, please sign up on via our website, because that'll be next Tuesday. Again, thank you all for tuning in. Pamela, any last words for us?
Well, I just want to say, you know, I really am an optimist. Today's talk sometimes doesn't sound like that, but I'm also a realist. But I think what we need to remember is Maui is resilient. And we are known for being no ko'oi. We are known for being innovative in the state. Together, we will survive this. We just need to work together, and we need to start coming up with some solid plans to shore up things that existed. But it's opportunities like this to talk and share, where people can ask questions, where people can challenge the thinking. That's what we really need to get to the best plan. So I'm really appreciative, Deidre. Thank you so much for this great opportunity to talk to your members and guests. We're really excited to do that. And we look forward to continuing the dialogue. And if anybody has other thoughts they want to share, they can reach us at the Maui Chamber of Commerce. We're your leverage network. We've been around for 100 years. We got a lot of contacts to help you. So don't hesitate to call if you need help, whether you're a member or not. But it's about us getting together and working together to think through these things. So thank you for that opportunity, and I look forward to working with you further.
All right, great. Thank you and congratulations on the 110 years. That's fantastic. We want to thank everybody. Until next time, we wish you well, be well, stay safe, and ahui ho. Thank you.
Thank you. Ahui ho.